Spiritual awakening. It's a term that seems to be becoming more mainstream lately. So, what exactly is a spiritual awakening? Well, in this video, I'm going to explain what it means, how it was triggered for me, and some signs and symptoms of awakening to help you realize if it's happening to you. If you asked 100 different spiritual teachers to define spiritual awakening or enlightenment, you'll probably get 100 different answers. And because of this confusion, when someone does have a spiritual experience or a general impulse to wake up, they're not sure who to turn to or what to believe. And because there may not be much support around them, they tend to try and forget about it to avoid ridicule from their friends and family or people around them thinking that they're crazy or something. But having a spiritual awakening doesn't mean you're crazy. Different religions and spiritual traditions explain and interpret an awakening in many different ways. But I'm going to explain it from a non-religious perspective, because that's how it seems most people, as well as myself, have experienced an awakening. A spiritual awakening can generally be defined as a newfound awareness of a spiritual reality beyond the physical world. It is a shift in your state of mind and being from an egocentric, worldly state of mind to a higher and more expansive state. An awakening happens when your ego begins to dissolve and you no longer filter everything through the lens of your ego. You begin to ask fundamental questions like, who am I? What am I? And why am I here? You begin to realize that there is more to you than you were previously aware of. That you are more than just your body, your ego, or your senses. An awakening is the initial spark of realization that you are not just a human being, but a spiritual being having a temporary human experience. This realization starts you on a journey of learning and understanding, and trying to experience the feeling of oneness with everything in the universe. Everybody's awakening experience is unique to them, but it seems that there are 3 different ways that a person can wake up. Number 1, and the rarest form of awakening, is natural wakefulness. Now, we are all born awake, but some people just don't seem to slip into the sleep state due to our culture and society like the rest of us do. 2, there are those who wake up gradually over a long period of time. And 3, and the most common way, is when people wake up suddenly through a traumatic physical experience or through intense psychological turmoil in their life, such as the death of a loved one, a bad car accident, or a near-death experience. For me personally, it was a traumatic experience that was the spark that got me to realize that there's something spiritual in this world that I didn't understand. I was involved in a freak accident when a tree was uprooted and smashed onto my truck as I was driving home from work. Unbelievably, I was not killed or even hurt in the accident. Somehow, automatically, I managed to jerk the steering wheel to the right and slam on the brakes, even though I didn't see it coming at all. It was like something took over my body and steered me to safety. As you can see, if I hadn't done that, the bulk of the tree would have completely crushed the cab right in. It got me thinking that some divine force, perhaps guardian angels or something, intervened to save my life. Or possibly it was just a sign from the universe that I was on the wrong path in my life and needed to change. Either way, it definitely got me thinking. It's a pretty interesting story. Maybe I'll make a separate video about it, but anyway, I didn't quite understand why it happened at the time, but it did start me on a path to change my perspective on life. Here are some signs and symptoms that I've experienced over the last few years and seem to be pretty common to everybody. You start craving meaning and purpose. You begin to seriously contemplate deep questions. You start to feel lost and alone. You see through the illusions of society. You desire to be alone more often. You want to quit your job. You thirst for authenticity and truth. You become aware of negative habits and want to start to change them. You experience anxiety and depression. Your intuition is heightened. You become aware of synchronicities. You feel more wonder and curiosity and have an extreme thirst for knowledge. The symptom that I experience the most can best be summed up by Steve Taylor, PhD, who is the author of several books on spirituality and psychology and a lecturer in psychology at Leeds Beckett University in the UK. Non-materialism. The impulse to accumulate falls away. It's no longer important to try to accumulate possessions, wealth, status, success, or power during spiritual awakening. In the sleep state, the urge to accumulate is a response to our sense of fragility and incompleteness. We try to bolster our sense of self by adding possessions, achievements, and power. This is also strongly reinforced by our culture and society. Similarly, we become overly attached to pre-existing aspects of our identity, such as appearance, intellect. We derive a sense of specialness from them, which also serves to reinforce our fragile sense of self and strengthens the ego. This is no longer necessary when we wake up because that sense of incompleteness and vulnerability begins to dissolve. In the sleep state, most people are products of the environment they were born into. They tend to conform to the values of their cultures and happily go along with lifestyles that are expected of them. But awakened individuals tend to be more autonomous and inner-directed. They feel less identified with their culture's values and are likely to reject them in favor of following their own impulses. People often realize that prior to spiritual awakening, they weren't really living their own lives, but largely following social conventions or trying to please other people to fit in. After awakening, it becomes more important for them to live authentically. Other people may see them as rebels or eccentric because they will likely start to disregard social norms and trends. They tend to reject the consumerist and status-oriented values of the culture in favor of a life of more simplicity. They have little interest in watching the latest popular TV shows, acquiring the latest gadgets or goods, or trying to impress people with their appearance, status, or their sophistication. Along with these spiritual awakening symptoms, they may shock others with their unconventionality and their willingness to contradict consensus opinions. Now, Steve's point about not really living your own life and just following social conventions, that's exactly how I felt. I started to lose interest in most of the things that I thought that I enjoyed. Then I began to feel isolated as the people in my life thought I was weird for not watching the latest popular movie or TV show or just not being interested in pop culture in general. It was only when I began my search for knowledge and started reading every book and watching every YouTube video I could find on the subject that I realized that I wasn't alone in the way I felt. It really helped to soothe my feelings of isolation and loneliness. So if you're having any of these symptoms, you may be going through a spiritual awakening right now. The only advice that I could give you would be to get as many different perspectives on spirituality as you can, and just go with what resonates or what feels right to you. The first book that I read when I began my spiritual journey was called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. He has an amazing and easy to understand approach to explaining the ego, which is your false sense of self, and how to transcend the ego by being present in the now. I would definitely recommend this book because it helped me to expand my knowledge and curiosity on the subject of spirituality and seek out more information. If you've had a spiritual awakening, leave a comment below and let me know how it was triggered for you and what your friends and family thought. It's really interesting to hear all these stories from other people. So, thanks for watching, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to my channel for more videos on spirituality, awakening, and metaphysics. See you soon.